Okay.
I'm gonna die.
Oh. Wow. Okay, and
That's actually wrong.
Cold open.
cold open, yeah.
But no, you're correct.
You're gonna die when hackers change your blood.
Yeah.
Welcome to another episode of Bourbon and Data Breaches, where we cover 5 of the most interesting data breaches from this last week and one of our favorite bourbons. I'm Steve.
Michael.
Divya.
Yep.
Are you serious?
Paul.
Everyone.
Howdy, I'm Shu.
Tom.
Hey.
Hey guys, I'm Tom Sheehan.
Great.
Don't laugh. No laughing.
Okay.
Well, Divya, what happened this week?
Oh, boy.
So
Yeah, what happened this week?
Hi, Divya.
a lot of stuff has been going on this past week. And first we're going to start with a story we covered 2 weeks ago. And this is when hackers brought down the government sites in Ukraine and they left behind a message saying, "Be afraid." So adding on to that, there's a news story, and with the whole tension between Ukraine and Russia, Ukraine was hit by more cyber attacks and destructive malware yesterday. Ukraine's parliament and other government and banking websites have been hit with another wave of distributed denial of service, so DDoS attacks. What do you guys have to say about this?
It is Friday, the 25th of February. By now, Russia has fully invaded Ukraine, is actively taking over Kiev. We had this story weeks ago saying that these cyber attacks against the Ukrainian government was a precursor to a full land war, and it was. So if you need any more proof that cyber war is really war, here it is.
Yeah, we've said a lot over the past year plus tax on this podcast that what's going on, especially with different ransomware gangs and groups, is privateering, that it's essentially state sponsored, and if it's not directly state sponsored, the state is turning a blind eye. And what we saw this week was Russia fully turn its cyber capability on another country in order to knock out critical infrastructure to soften them up for a land invasion. And so if you've only been paying attention to the commercial aspect of that, it's really time to pay attention to the political aspect of that, because you'll notice that all of the those same hacker groups, I believe starting with Conti
Today, they announced that they are fully in support of the Russian government and all of the Russian government's actions.
That's right.
What
about
shocked,
value?
shocked that they would come out for that.
And Divya reminded me that Russia rounded up ReEvil about a month ago. And now Russia is deploying cyber attacks. So we don't know for sure if ReEvil's involved, but if you suddenly have 10 extra hackers right before a war, what you gonna do?
Use them.
right? And it's very useful stuff. What are they trying to do? They're trying to shut down transportation, and they're trying to make sure that no money leaves the country. So that's been pretty successful. They also obviously want to make sure that there's at least some kind of media blackout, so that there's a delay in news making it to the West as much as possible. And again, and that's been effective. And so, you know, when you think invasion, obviously you're still thinking about actual tanks, you're thinking about actual buildings, you're thinking about people who had to say goodbye to their kids. The kids are fleeing to Poland, the people are staying behind to fight. But this is a major part of crippling a country. As everything's gone online, it's moved into that same realm.
Well, it's not just money leaving the country, but it's money coming in. That someone was posting the official bank of the Ukrainian government as a way to support Ukrainian efforts. But if you can take down that bank, if you can cripple their infrastructure, even if they are receiving outside payments, they can't do anything with it. Seeing the extra dimension of warfare, because if I can, before I attack you, cripple your infrastructure, right? We're not at war, but all of a sudden your subway doesn't work. then it's an extra advantage, very similar to the airfield.
And it's like in World War II, they sent in people to cut the electric lines and the communication lines. Well, now they just take them offline with DDoS and they shut down the ministries.
Yeah, it's
thing.
yeah, exactly. It used to
Same
be done.
thing.
Used to be done by people at night
Cutting wires.
cutting wires and messing up train tracks.
Story number 2. So this is about Ericson. Headline reads, "We can never get rid of the history. Ericson chief on ISIS payments." It turns out in 2019, during a bribery scandal, that Ericson accidentally paid ISIS, the terrorist group, cash. So what do you guys have to say about this?
This is so bad, but it's hilarious that they accidentally were paying ISIS while being investigated for bribing people. It's like,
Right.
Stick to one crime at a time, people. Come on.
Come on.
This is not a victimless crime. What the hell is Ericsson doing? I mean,
Well, they're bribing someone so they can build telephone infrastructure across a route.
I mean, it's absolutely crazy. Yeah. They said it was payment for basically like safe packet or safe passage, but wow.
Isn't that the way all countries work, or just mine?
It is. It's the way all the oil companies do it. They
No,
bribe one tribe so they can get the land or whatever.
it's just Argentina.
Yeah, that's the way my country works. I mean, if you don't bribe people, you don't get to do anything pretty much.
Yeah. You have to bribe people in Argentina.
Of course.
Bribed
Yeah,
ISIS.
I think we can come to a consensus about a general list of no-nos. And even if you limited it only to 3, ISIS probably still at least number 2.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, you probably
That's a good-
shouldn't bribe ISIS. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bad optics.
Headquarters of Ericsson had no idea what was going on, man.
But yeah, I mean, I was going to ask that, were they doing that willingly? I mean, knowingly that they were actually paying to ISIS, or there's some
They're a
room for
bunch of
doubt
Swedish
there?
They
guys.
claim that allegedly they accidentally paid ISIS.
Potentially.
Oh, accidentally. Okay, I see your point.
Yeah. Bottom line is, whether someone willingly turned a blind eye or like this was an honest mistake, don't know, but someone didn't do their due diligence.
I mean, who hasn't engaged in a little light treason by accident?
Mhm.
By
course.
accident. I mean, you go to Washington, D.C. for a simple, peaceful protest, and next thing you know, you're convicted of treason. Holy cow.
We need to move on from Shu.
I know.
That's
Do you have any
Shu
comments?
Shu hit his antler somewhere.
everything is too PC nowadays.
So, I mean, in
No, it
conclusion,
was not.
Don't pay ISIS.
don't pay ISIS.
Yeah, that's very bad.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Time for a bourbon break. So today,
You want to go ahead and break the seal on that, Steve?
yes, I will try this for the first time. So today we have the Smooth Ambler. Here, let me get it closer. Smooth Ambler, and it's the Contradiction bourbon. Now, I went into this with reservations because this is a sourced bourbon. It is not bottled in bond. They didn't distill it themselves. They're what looks to be a new distillery in West Virginia. And they sourced this bourbon from West Virginia, Tennessee, and Indiana. So right away, you're not getting Kentucky bourbon. And it is a source bourbon, which has been dubious in the past. But I will say that this one was pretty surprising. So Divya, what can you tell us about this one?
Okay, guys, so the Smooth Ambler Contradiction, also what I refer to this bourbon as elephant on ball, which is a barrel, which is a circle bourbon. So the tasting notes are listed as full of oak, dried cherries, vanilla, and cinnamon, creating a signature mature bourbon nose. sweet from the wheat and spice from the rye, and a bit of leather around the palate. Its viscosity creates a smooth and pleasant finish. On Total Wine, it goes for like $36.49. And it says it's West Virginian with notes of dried fruit and butter rum. Have on the bourbon. So what are you tasting, Steve and Mike?
Mike is not tasting
Okay.
anything,
Okay,
so this is
so-
all me. So you're getting
Mike hasn't said shit.
the uncut Steve report.
Oh my God.
I mean, it's pleasant on the nose, not much going on the nose. I get a little grain, a little corn. So I really like this bourbon, and I'm super surprised that it's sourced and it's this good. It's surprisingly smooth. It is not a corny bourbon. It's much more of a mellow grain and wheat bourbon. I do get a little rye spice. I know they mentioned rye, but it's not predominant here. It's a really good, well-balanced bourbon. I'm very surprised that a sourced bourbon turns out this well. It's got to be that they're sourcing great bourbon and they know what they're actually doing with mixing it, right? So this is what appears to be a pretty young distillery since they're sourcing the bourbon, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can't, make old bourbon. When you're a young distillery, you have to grow into it. But this is really good. I would highly recommend this. You said it's what, $36? I've had $60 sourced bourbons that were way worse. So I'm looking at like Oak and Eden and a few others that are sourced and that are popular, but that are not as good as this.
Calling them out.
So I really recommend this. It's really good. I'm entirely surprised. And good on you, West Virginia. I didn't know that West Virginia even made bourbon. Good on you for making good bourbon.
Yeah, we're also looking at you, Bib and Tucker.
Yeah, Bib and Tucker and Oak and Eden. I got both of those at the same time. They're both sourced, and I was like, "What are you doing?"
We're not against sourced here. Might be a warning, but plenty of good source bourbons here.
What's the third?
I would say that if you are about to buy a sourced bourbon, beware, because it's like the problem is that it's incredibly easy to source bourbon. You just buy it and sell it. And a lot of these new bourbon companies, they source the bourbon, they spend all their money on marketing. So they're not really bourbon companies, they're marketing.
That's right.
And if you're at best, you're getting some like off-brand Heaven Hill, right? At worst, they cut costs, they got some shit bourbon, and you're stuck with a pretty bottle with a bad bourbon, right? So typically you want to see someone that is distilling their own, bottled in bonds. And it may start off not great. Like that was my experience with Still Austin. Is the first year I tried them wasn't great. Second year I tried them, it was wonderful, right? Because they got better.
Yes, I would say source bourbon too. I am more price conscious when I buy a source bourbon. Is it worth $36, knowing that there was not as much effort put into it as a bottle of bond? Is it worth $36? I can tell you, Bib and Tucker was not worth like 50 or 60 bucks that we paid for it.
And
Depends on the taste.
it's just a gimmick. Like
Yeah.
Oak and Eden, they put wood slats in the bottle. It's just, it's just a gimmick.
Although, given that Shoe bought all that bourbon in Washington, probably it started out at like $6 a bottle. And it was
Yes, that was absolutely a terrible choice. One of my many life mistakes. Don't buy that, whatever it was.
third story.
Okay, moving on to story number 3. This time it's a cookware giant, Meyer, who disclosed a cyber attack that impacted employees.
Oh, Flashpoint. Stop following us around the internet, Flashpoint.
The largest cookware distributor in the US and the second largest globally has informed US Attorney General offices of a data breach affecting thousands of its employees. What do you guys have to say about this story?
Scroll down, because I think they said what they disclosed, and it was pretty concerning.
And they also disclosed who attacked it.
But
this
not
is-
only that, what is the outreach message?
This is the spicy bit. Look at everything that they ended up leaking.
I can't read that. What is it?
It is their full identity, including everything.
What
Name,
are they leaking?
address, date of birth, gender, ethnicity, social security number, like medical conditions, drug screenings.
Really
code
bad.
Cards.
It's not good.
Okay. So it's their HR database.
Like, you see that list and it's like, congratulations, you have fraud.
Oh boy.
Right.
It's always tough to see it against employees. I mean, nobody wants their consumers to get breached, but typically you don't know what's in a consumer database. You know, if you get breached, if your HR records get breached, right? That's why they would have passports, I assume, is for.
We don't collect half of that stuff. Like, we don't have like gender, COVID status, medical conditions. Like, why do you need all of that? If you're-
Information on dependents too. Your health insurance company would need that, but why, as an employer, would you need information on dependents? I don't understand that.
Insurance.
Well, insurance companies care, but
Insurance companies care, but why as an employer do you need that?
Well, and I would contend that random drug screening results, unless like you're full of drugs, they should delete that after. Like, here's the big thing. No one deletes data and then they get breached. And then it's horrible, right?
Right.
Like, if you don't need like, you know, COVID test results or drug screenings or like immigration status, just delete it.
right. Well, if you were paranoid, you would think they were building a dossier against you.
Yeah,
Well, someone is.
I agree. Yeah, if someone is, yeah.
Yeah,
that's
someone is. So,
No, but the HR file, the HR file is like the rough draft. You know, it's not necessarily for that purpose, but it gives you everything that you need.
I see.
Fraud is so easy. You can have like 2 of those things and commit fraud. So to give someone like 14 different data points on you, like they are you now. It's not fraud. They've just taken over your identity. They know more about you than you know about you.
Right. Well, Steve, are there guidelines to HR departments for, you know, basically telling them what stuff they can get rid of so they don't have it around?
I mean, you'd think that HIPAA would apply, but it doesn't.
Yeah. Oh, actually, an interesting thought I'm having is I wonder if it's ex-employees too.
Oh,
Right,
sure.
Right. I'm
Yeah.
wondering if you quit like 5 years ago, but you're still part of the breach.
That's how most breaches are.
Yeah.
If you've ever used like Shutterstock, congrats, you know, you're breached. So yeah, I don't think there's any guidelines in terms of data retention. There should be.
Mhm.
You know, a
You'd
big
think.
problem is privacy laws are state by state. And currently we have a system where you say, give me all of your data and I'll select the stuff that I need. You know, there's this whole movement for each person to control their own identity and their own records. And they only give permission, temporary permission, to the data points that someone else needs. And so there's a big push in terms of privacy. It's been happening for a while, but I think we're going to hear a lot about privacy this year. And I think that we're going to start seeing crackdowns where these laws have been in place, everyone's flagrantly ignoring the laws, and we're going to see attorney generals going after the violators.
I find this story interesting. Just that a couple of weeks ago we discussed there was a payroll company that got breached, and a lot of this information here was also released, but not to the degree of what we have here. Not like random drug screening results. Regular payroll information being leaked is bad enough, but this happened to one specific company. It wasn't an aggregator. So a payroll company, you would think, has very good security and may have mitigated the damage. You're now talking about a smaller mom and pop shop.
Well,
that
two
may not
things.
have as much-
One is I wouldn't necessarily assume that because all these apps are built for speed, right? They're commercial applications. And so their primary concern is how quickly can we acquire customers? How quickly can we take in massive amounts of data? And they're not necessarily built for the use case of being broken into. And I think she's extra upset because people are going to find out that his COVID status is conscientious objector.
Well, I assumed Meyer did their own HR internal, right? So
You're leaking my data for the hackers, Mike. Thanks.
the way I read this is Meyer got broken into, and this brings back up who in your company needs to be security aware. And you're thinking executives, you're thinking the security team, the IT team, but you're probably not thinking the HR department. But clearly they're handling some of the most sensitive data. So if you're not thinking that every employee needs to be aware of security and concerned about, you know, like the level of security, I guarantee if I handed you all this sensitive data, you as someone that's security aware would say, hey, I don't feel comfortable handling this data. Can I delete some of it?
Story number 4, this is pretty huge, and I think this happened right before the Super Bowl. And Black ransomware again claims that it hacked San Francisco 49ers, and they're claiming that they stole some of the football team's financial data. So allegedly, like the stolen team documents on the dark web in a file marked 2020 invoices is the name of where their data is housed. So what do you guys have to say about this?
I don't think the 49ers want the public to know what teams actually pay for.
I mean, the contracts with the players are public, but I think it's going to be very interesting because you're going to see a whole lot of wire fraud attempts because you now know dollar amounts, you know, accounts payable, accounts receivable, and I guarantee it's not small amounts. So that there's going to be a whole lot of wire fraud attempts around this. This is insult to injury, right? Because the 49ers didn't make it to the Super Bowl and then they got ransomed.
And it's not marked contracts. It's marked invoices.
Right.
And if you showed me 2 folders and one was marked contracts, I would be like, I know what's in that.
Yeah.
Especially if it's the New York Giants. But
I'm not sure this whole thing would be very surprising because I think in sports we just let our imagination run wild on what they're paying for. I'm just glad it happened to the 49ers.
But they are paying. But the point is that they are paying for what you think they're paying for.
Right, yeah.
She was a Las Vegas Raiders fan.
No way, man.
You're not team Raiders. I know you are. Come on.
No, I'm not pro football or anything. I kind of like the Texas A&M Aggies for college football. It's just
So right when this came out, I had just been introduced to the hacks and the research tab, and I was just having a look at the teaser documents they show on the sites on Lockbit and, you know, just on these different sites. It's incredible what they have.
Yeah. I mean,
it will shut down your company. It'll curl your hair, which is why they pay the ransom, right?
yeah, Blackbite. I think they released full sets of documents or partial sets of documents. I mean, this includes invoices, who they're to, who they're from. This includes dollar amounts, how much is paid.
Right.
Potentially, and I don't know for a fact, but potentially like account payable and account receivable accounts. So, I mean, you're getting a whole bunch of really sensitive financial information.
Yeah.
just calling this out. There's a section here. It is Blackbite, one of the more active groups we see, and it is a ransomware as a service. So the leaders of Blackbite maybe did very little work. Some underlings did something, franchised out the tools, and now they've hit one of the most were wealthiest franchises in professional
We
sports.
saw a ton of third-party breaches in the weeks before this happened. Really, Park Mobile is one of them, and I think what's the other? And
Gravatar was up there.
yeah, on the marketing side, and those were all just usernames, passwords, license plates, email addresses. So I think even the folks who got access originally did very little work. There's a lot of people inside the organization that are helping by just spreading their information around, and then those third-party services that they use get popped, and it's really not that difficult.
Well, and you think about what it takes. Hackers have to find one employee to let them in. That's it, one. So I don't know how big the franchise is, but I would assume several thousand employees are keeping the 49ers afloat. And you just got to find one. You get in, you grab invoices, you deploy ransomware, and you can cripple a franchise like this. And if you pay, then you're out millions. And if you don't pay, then the damages are potentially even bigger because you don't know what they have.
I mean, it never ceases to amaze me. Sorry, go ahead, Shoot.
No, go ahead, Miguel. Sorry.
It never ceases to amaze me that the fact that the IT team would not get like a proper system in place to get backups regularly. So you do not get like, you are not a hostage to the information being encrypted. I mean, I really don't get it. I mean, it's like people still sending naked pictures of themselves throughout phones and the internet. I mean,
that happens all the time. I mean,
yeah, but I mean, we already have enough proof that that's never going to end up well. So, and yet some people keep doing it. I mean, at this point, unless you are living, I don't know, under a rock, you know that ransomware, it's likely to hit a company, very likely, or at least they're going to try it. So, I mean, is it going to kill you to have like a daily backup, or at least, I don't know, a weekly backup?
Well, but ransomware has evolved. It's not only the encryption, but they steal data as they encrypt, and it's the threat of releasing the data. So
Yes,
it's like if I encrypted your laptop.
that is right. Yes.
You may have a backup, but as I encrypted it, I stole all of your naked photos and like shady business dealings. And it's like, well, you're going to pay me $50,000 or I'm just going to release all of your stuff, right? So
Of course.
the 49ers
Yes.
have to worry about reputational damage, and for a franchise, reputation is everything, right? Like what if the 49ers were found to be involved in some sort of illegal activity, then they could have serious fines and consequences that far exceed the ransom. And so ransomware gangs are trying to put as much pressure on the business as possible to get the maximum payout, because they're good at what they do, right? Like they're really good at getting people to pay that ransom.
Yeah. No, I see your point, and actually I think it's very fair, and it's actually true, because there's the risk of information, not only losing your information, but also getting your information leaked to the whole world. So that's a problem. But then again, if you are going to engage in an illegal activity, then are you going to leave a trail on a computer? I mean,
Well,
that's
the other point.
Yes.
Is that the people who are most culpable are the ones making the decisions about whether you pay the ransom or not.
Right.
If you're the president of the team,
it's a crazy world.
I'll refer back to the earlier story where Ericson was paying ISIS. So yes, you are going to leave a trail.
That's crazy. That's
Moving on to story number 5. Okay, so this is the last story of the evening. It's a very spicy story and I love it. It's very sad, but yes, you
actually don't know what it is.
Yes, so the Credit Suisse leak unmasks criminals, fraudsters, and corrupt politicians, and they had a massive data leak, and they revealed the secret owners of like 80 billion pounds held in, euros held in Swiss banks.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a whistleblower thing, but what do you guys have to say about this one?
That this is the latest in a long line of, when you think of what was it, the Cayman Diaries, Panama Papers. There was the same thing happened in the Caymans. The same thing happened with a bunch of LLCs. This is just yet another release of data that shows a lot of shady stuff happening in the banking system.
That the wealthiest people in the world never thought would be brought to light.
Yep.
That's the problem.
They were guaranteed it never would, right?
That's right.
There was no
Ha,
paper,
ha, ha.
nothing like that. And then it takes one insider who can release all of this. And you know, you read through it and it's dictators, people that have been accused of war crimes. It is a lot of people that are not terribly nice that have engaged in private banking. And I mean, big surprise, right? But you know, Credit Suisse is going to have a lot of explaining to do as to why they've been shielding and sheltering people that have been, you know, in violation of the Geneva
I
Convention.
mean, Credit Suisse has been dodging a lot of dodgy questions for a long time. That's a multi-generational task.
Yeah,
I
starting
gotta
with
say, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just saying starting in World War II, but go ahead. You know.
I was going to say that it does seem that actually crime does pay.
That's right.
No, to your point, Steve, I was when I was reading this, I thought I read this article before, not
Right.
just in terms of the victims in this, but also Credit Suisse. It's
No, but it was UBS before. That's the thing. It's the other big Swiss bank that had a release of documents. Maybe like the UBS papers.
It's the banks in the country who almost alone has the most secretive banking regulations, so they can still get away with it.
Yep.
That's crazy.
so
Well,
if Jeffrey Epstein's data was not in the UBS leak, his data might be in Credit Suisse.
Or with the Caymans, right? So
Right.
Caymans was like the new Switzerland and they got popped.
Yeah.
And I bet everyone in Switzerland was like, ha ha, that's what you get for dealing with the Caymans. And then they get popped. And so
Their accent is a little funny.
yeah, I mean, the question is anything going to come out of it though?
No.
And we haven't seen anything come out of, I mean, every once in a while, someone will say, oh yeah, this person, by the way, they were named in the Panama Papers.
If you sit and watch a documentary on the 40s and you hear a stolen artwork and or stolen gold, it's like, it's not a mystery where it went. It's in Switzerland. And that's been their business model since forever. And it's a business model, fortunately, that works. It just happens morally wrong, but that's what they built on everything on.
Yeah.
And so that's where that money's been, like your money washed here. It's just a big sink.
Right. It's there along with all those gold teeth, you know, it's disgusting.
Nobody's shocked, you know, and no, nothing's going to come of it. It's interesting to know.
Yeah, probably worst case scenario, the IRS of every country is going to force them to pay, maybe send them to jail, but it's unlikely.
The problem is the people that you would send to try to prosecute any penalties also have accounts.
Yeah.
I agree with Miguel. If you are a dictator and we just found your money, and maybe you're no longer a popular dictator, then it may not just be you ruling the country, but it may be all of your wealth as well. I think, you know, like when Gaddafi was toppled, right? It's not like Gaddafi and all of his bank accounts were seized, it was just him. And so I think that the more visibility you get towards the money, the more consequences you have. And so, you know, there's current dictators, right? But that doesn't mean that they're necessarily future dictators. And those countries could attempt to take back the slush funds.
I said too much.
He's ducking and covering, guys.
This
I'm ducking and covering.
an episode of Bourbon and Data Breaches. If you like what you saw today, please like, comment, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you saw today,
Good for you.
blocked.
And don't forget to duck and cover.
Yet blocked. Until next time.